Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 7th of November, now it's 12 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments and news. A lot of news, to be more precise. And well, I will start with short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. According to media reports, there was no significant changes on any of the sectors of the front line. It's artillery duels all along the line of contact, reckoning force operations, and local scale skirmishes. Although initiative is in Russian hands all along the front line, from Kherson region up to northern sectors, Kupiansk and Kharkov region. Main hotspots of course are, when it comes to southern sectors, Kherson for example, Oleshki direction, which is right next to destroyed Antonovsky bridge, where Ukrainian forces are still trying to enlarge their foothold or small bridgehead, and of course also this small settlement under the name of Krinky, which is partially still controlled by Ukrainian forces, and on daily basis Kiev regime is sending more and more units to reinforce their foothold in on the left bank, and seems like they're not really realizing that they are getting into trap once again. We did see this story plays out during this conflict quite many times, so no surprises really. At this point, I don't think anyone can doubt that Kiev regime is just unable to learn anything whatsoever. Also, by the way, hotspots are, of course, Orekhov bridgehead in Zaporozhye direction, where Russian forces are significantly active than Ukrainian forces, and it seems like Russian side is in final preparations of the ground to encircle Ukrainian grouping of forces in Orekhov bridgehead sometime in the future. I guess we will see encirclement of Ukrainian forces in this area if they are not withdrawn before January for sure, before large-scale Russian offensive begins. And also, when it comes to Donetsk direction, main hotspot still is Vremyevsky salient, where Russian side is managing to improve their current positions on daily basis. And as I reported previously, this constant increase of Russian pressure in Vremyevsky salient direction is due to lack of manpower on Ukrainian side, because according to some reports, almost all the more or less battle ready or battle capable Ukrainian units from Vremyevsky salient area were redeployed in direction of Kherson region. When it comes to Donetsk direction, of course, main hotspot is Avdiivka, Krasnogorovka and Marinka, although there is no significant changes, and there is no need for Russian side in this particular case to rush developments. Avdiivka is in operational encirclement, and more and more channels, by the way, more and more channels now, and experts are basically voicing their opinions that Avdiivka did become second Bakhmut for Ukrainian armed forces, exactly because Kiev regime is just unable to learn anything. And if you remember, we were saying from very beginning of this Avdiivka offensive of Russian forces that this city gonna become second Bakhmut. So we were spot on from initial stages of this offensive, and well, seems like all the other channels now are reading big picture quite same way. When it comes to northern sectors, as I said, there were no significant changes. Local scale skirmishes between the sides and mainly artillery duels and drone wars. Initiative is in Russian hands all along the front line. Not, although at this point nothing is happening that can be called a breakthrough. Operational pause is holding, and it will stay this way, I believe, before large-scale Russian offensive operation begins. And before I continue with some additional news, and as I said, plenty of news, by the way, plenty of very important and interesting news, let me note that this project, with several channels on YouTube, Rumble and Telegram, including this one, by the way, exists solely thanks to support of members of our community, and I will be immensely grateful if you will also consider to support my work with small donations through PayPal, buy me coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You can see links under this video in the description box or in the pinned comment. That's been said, let's continue with news now, and RIA Novosti is reporting that early hours of this morning, Russian air defense system did manage to shut down or destroy 17 Ukrainian drones that were heading in the direction of Crimea. So according to reports from Russian Defense Ministry, 17 drones were destroyed, 8 drones were shut down, and 9 drones were suppressed by radio-electronic warfare systems, some over the Crimea Peninsula and some over the Black Sea, while these drones were approaching Crimea. And by the way, also very interesting news are coming from Kiev. And well, probably we can say at this point that first stage of internal confrontation among Ukrainian so-called elites has begun, and well, this confrontation already has its first casualties. For example, aide of Zaluzhny, head of Ukraine's general staff, was killed in Kiev as a result of explosion of a hand grenade. Some Ukrainian channels and officials, by the way, are saying that it was an accident. This grenade was used or unsafely, or approached unsafely by this aide of Zaluzhny, and that was as a result of it, explosion did occur, and he died, and his son was wounded. But there are some other reports according to which this is not an accident, and Zelensky and his inner circle did conducted first strike on Zaluzhny and his group, let's say this way. I would not be surprised if some channels will begin characterizing this situation in Kiev now as the beginning of a civil war in Ukraine, because the tensions between Zaluzhny and Zelensky definitely are very high. And dear friends, I remind you that lately Western media, for whatever reason, are treating Zaluzhny as some kind of superstar, despite all the failures of the Ukrainian armed forces on the front line. So maybe Western leaders have made up their mind, and maybe they want to replace Zelensky with Zaluzhny. That's a possibility, and if Zelensky and his inner circle fears such a development, I would not be surprised if they will continue strikes on Zaluzhny's inner circle, and maybe on Zaluzhny himself also. And dear friends, this escalation inside Ukraine internal confrontation will just increase in coming days and weeks, because Zelensky prolonged martial law in Ukraine, and therefore basically shut up all the talks about presidential elections in 2024. As long as martial law is in force, there can be no presidential elections. At least that's a reality on the ground right now. Let's see how Western leaders will react on such developments. But yet again, because Zaluzhny have been treated by Western media as some kind of superstar, I guess Washington and London are making their beat on Zaluzhny. But let's see. RT is, by the way, also reporting about cracks that are emerging within the Ukrainian leadership, and this was written by New York Times, by the way. So let me read several sentences. There are growing fissures within the Ukrainian leadership, the New York Times has claimed, citing recent public criticism of the country's top military commander Valery Zaluzhny by President Vladimir Zelensky's administration. The general claimed last week that the conflict with Russia has reached stalemate and that neither side was likely to make significant gains anytime soon. In its article on Saturday, the New York Times alleged that public rebuke signaled an emerging rift between the military and civilian leadership at an already challenging time for Ukraine. According to newspaper, rumors about tensions between Zaluzhny and Zelensky have been circulating in Ukraine for over a year now. However, the scolding on Saturday that presidential office deputy head Igor Zhovka leveled at the commander over recent piece in The Economist may have been the first time this rift had been exposed, the New York Times suggested. So yet again, as I just said, Western media pays significant attention to Zaluzhny, and maybe we will see some coup in Ukraine when Zelensky will be removed from office and maybe forced to flee Ukraine. That's certainly a possibility at this point, but let's see how the situation develops. Also, by the way, RT is reporting that Zelensky admits Ukraine's backers talking to Russia. This is about this topic of peace talks between Kiev and Moscow that have been articulated in the Western media lately, and according to some reports, Washington behind the scenes are pushing Zelensky to begin its negotiations. Although, by the way, very same Zelensky had in recent his interviews did use extreme language to characterize Russia, to characterize Russian leadership, which once again indicates that this individual, Zelensky, is in no position to be taken seriously by Moscow, and Zelensky is definitely not a figure with whom Moscow will probably negotiate anything at all. And yet again, by the way, if sometime in the future, and when sometime in the future, some negotiations will begin between Moscow and major Western states about future of Ukraine, this failed state, I believe those negotiations will be held on Russian terms, and basically it will be a Russian ultimatum. That's how it gonna went down. Russia will come up with ultimatum, and I guess Western ruling elite will be forced to take this ultimatum seriously and basically agree on Russian terms. And as I said, by the way, many times before, my understanding is that once this conflict in Ukraine will end, vast majority, major part of Ukraine will become under full Russian control, and the western regions of Ukraine probably will be controlled by NATO member states that are bordering Ukraine, namely Poland, Hungary, Romania, and possibly Slovakia, although Hungary and Slovakia have some difficulties, as I understand, in terms which country is more eligible on which regions of western Ukraine. So they may have some tensions between each other, but they will sort it out, I believe. But when it comes to this particular article, let me read several sentences. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has admitted that countries among his Western backers are communicating with Russia, despite his repeated refusal to engage with Moscow on resolving the ongoing conflict. In an interview with NBC News on Sunday, Zelensky was asked to address reports that Western officials had approached Kyiv to discuss potential peace talks with Russia. The channel also sought to clarify whether he was personally involved in the process. Zelensky said that while he had heard a lot of different voices and emotions, and without any contradictions and propositions, he did not have any contact with Russia, adding that all top US officials and policymakers were well aware of his refusal to negotiate with Moscow. The Ukrainian president also stressed that he had not experienced any overpressure from the West to sit down with the opponent. However, he considered that this is quote, by the way, I am sure that there are some countries on the level of intelligence or advisors of leaders. Maybe they speak with Russia, maybe they think how to manage everything. According to Zelensky, however, talks are impossible until Russian troops leave the territory that Ukraine claims as its own. As I said, by the way, Zelensky is no position to be seen by Moscow as a possible negotiating side, as a figure with whom some talks can be held. And maybe, by the way, peace talks will take place if Zaluzhny will replace Zelensky. That's a possibility for sure, but it will definitely not happen before decisive Russian counteroffensive, I believe, which will take place this winter. And well, let's continue. And by the way, as I said, my understanding is that entire Ukraine, with exception of western regions, will become under full Russian control, but I may be mistaken. But anyway, my understanding is that at least during their negotiations, whenever those negotiations gonna take place, at least Russia will demand full control over the eastern and southern regions of Ukraine, from Kharkiv to Odessa. This is 100%. Anything else will be seen as a failure in Russia, I believe. That's why Moscow will 100% insist that from Kharkiv to Odessa, entire territories will be controlled by Russia, if not entire Ukraine, with exception of western regions, which Russia don't really have interest towards which. Anyway, let's continue, by the way, and we have a quite interesting statement from Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Dmitry Kuleba. And he said that Ukraine is facing worst winter ever this year. Ukraine is bracing for the worst winter in its history, as it prepares for large-scale blackouts due to Russian missile strikes. Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba has said Moscow began targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure last autumn in response to the bombings of Crimean Bridge. In an interview with the German daily Die Welt on Monday, Kuleba revealed that he had bought dozens of candles, and his father had bought a truck of firewood in anticipation of Russian attacks. Well, recently, by the way, some reports are appearing on internet, including from Ukraine, that Russia did stockpile about 1,000 long-range tactical missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and so on. And there are anticipation that in upcoming weeks Russia will begin massive strikes on logistical and military infrastructure of Kiev regime, and possibly energo infrastructure will be targeted, because of course energo facilities are used by Kiev regime in its military means. Also, by the way, RIA Novosti is reporting that Zelensky had changed its tune in his negotiations with the West, and this is also reported by many media outlets, in this particular case by Spectator. And according to this report, if before Zelensky was stating or demanding from West some some money and weapons so that they can win this conflict or defeat Russia. Now Zelensky's tune has changed, and his position is that if West will not provide Ukraine with all the necessary military equipment and additional billions and billions, then this conflict will be prolonged indefinitely. As I said, man, Zelensky is truly out of touch with reality. Maybe Ukrainian side is seeing this conflict as a kind of stalemate, but Russia did not see it this way. And I remind you, dear friends, that some time ago Putin did say that Russia did not even start yet. And this is case, by the way, this is true. Russia did not even started yet. And when Russia will start, nothing can stop it. Nothing. And I believe Russia will start this winter. But point is, will Zelensky still be in office for that time? Because, as I said, man, tensions in Kyiv between different groups, especially between group of Zelensky and group of Zaluzhny, are intensifying, and that confrontation already has its first casualties. Anyway, let's continue. RT is reporting that EU state to scrap free accommodation for Ukrainian refugees. Well, Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has announced his government's intent to make Ukrainian refugees pay for their accommodations in the country. He noted that Ireland has so far been among the most generous EU member states in this respect, but cannot sustain it anymore due to housing crisis. Well, bad news for Ukrainian refugees in Ireland, but yet again, who can blame Dublin, by the way? Who can blame Irish government? They did whatever they could to support refugees, but probably they had enough of it. But I believe, by the way, no one gonna throw refugees on the streets. I believe social services and job center will at least try to provide some alternatives for refugees and also jobs, so that they can work and pay for a living. Let's continue. And well, TASS news agency is reporting about a statement that Lavrov, head of Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, did made about escalation in the Middle East, and according to him, leadership of Anglo-Saxons, we are talking about Washington and London, of course, mainly, are pushing Middle East towards regional war. Very strong statement. Which once again at least partially confirms my reading of big picture, that Washington and London are planning to engulf entire Middle East in the confrontation, and main goal for ruling class of the West under leadership of very same Washington and London, I believe, is to distract shipping in the Persian Gulf and of course Hormuz Strait here, so that China will be cut off from energy sources of Middle East. That's why, in my understanding, Washington and London will try to enlarge confrontation between Palestine and Israel and provoke third parties to get involved in this confrontation. And I do report on daily basis, by the way, that Israel is constantly striking on the northern flank, let's say, in Lebanon, in the southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah, a Lebanese political and military group, has its positions, and I see these constant strikes on southern Lebanon as a preparation of exactly what I just said, preparation of the ground to provoke Hezbollah to get involved in this confrontation. Then, of course, US will get involved and US and some other NATO member states have significant military assets in Mediterranean, by the way, although not just aircraft carriers and some battleships, but also manpower, amphibious ships, manpower, additional air force, and so on. Cyprus, by the way, has become a military base for quite a number of NATO member states at this point. And if you take a look, by the way, this is Cyprus. It's not really far from Lebanon or from Palestine and Israel. And airfields, as I understand, airfields in Cyprus are packed with the NATO member states' military assets, fighter jets, fighter bombers, and so on. And if Hezbollah will be provoked to get involved in this confrontation, of course, then it will be only a matter of time when Washington and London will provoke Iran, will provoke conflict between Iran and Israel. And of course, Washington will definitely try, and London, to provoke conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And if they will succeed in this, then Iran will end up in direct clashes with many kingdoms of all of the kingdoms, basically, of the Persian Gulf. That's how influential Saudi Arabia is. But, dear friends, recently we had statements from a UAE advisor of UAE's president, if I'm of head of UAE, did make statement that Iran is playing not escalatory role in the region, but exactly the opposite. Iran is trying to play a positive role and to de-escalate. And I don't think this statement was done randomly. I believe very same approach have all the kingdoms and all the states in the Persian Gulf, which is good, by the way, which is good, because we definitely don't need to see any further escalation of this conflict, isn't it? And some regional war in the Middle East, which will devastate entire world. So let's see how will things go. But Lavrov is definitely correct, and Western leadership definitely pushing Middle East towards regional conflict. Let's continue, and RT is reporting, dear friends, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said his country will have to manage overall security in Gaza for an indefinite period of time after the current war with Hamas ends. This was stated by Benjamin Netanyahu during his interview with ABC News. Once again, we have at least indirect indicator that Netanyahu's government is planning to force out civilians from Gaza Strip into Egypt. Maybe they have some plans to open some humanitarian corridor to allow Palestinian civilians to enter West Bank. And if you take a look on the map, by the way, this is Gaza Strip here, which is bordering Egypt, Sinai Peninsula here. And this is, by the way, West Bank. And Gaza Strip has no direct link to the West Bank. And maybe Netanyahu's government is planning to not just force residents of Gaza Strip into Egypt, but also into West Bank, by giving them some humanitarian corridor. But anyway, whatever the intention is, Netanyahu's government is committing war crime and crime against humanity for sure. This is undoubted. And there are some reports at this point that maybe Netanyahu's government will try to force Palestinians out of region, even in the West Bank, which is here, by the way. And maybe Israeli government will try to push Palestinians from West Bank into Syria and Jordan. After things will escalate immensely, and the entire region will be engulfed in the conflict. And when it comes to these predictions, as you know, I was saying from very beginning that most likely Netanyahu's government will try to force Palestinians from Gaza Strip into Egypt, and we have more and more indicators that exactly that may happen. Let's continue. And TASS news agency is reporting that according to statements from some officials of IDF, Israeli Defense Force, in the next 48 hours, Israeli forces will enter Gaza City itself, which is already encircled, although we did not see yet too many reports about clashes inside the Gaza City. As you can see here, that's current approximate positions. Gaza is here, by the way, almost in the middle, and it's definitely encircled. Gaza and surrounding its suburbs are encircled, and today or tomorrow we may see a beginning of fights inside Gaza, and it's gonna be a very difficult fight for IDF. That's for sure. Although they are quite prepared, I guess, for urban battles, but same can be said about Palestinian armed groups. So it's gonna be a very difficult and bloody battle for both sides. Let's continue now, and this is unbelievable news, by the way, shocking news, really, because one of the Israeli ministers, by the way, on 5th of November, made a statement that Israeli side is considering to use nuclear weapons in the Gaza Strip, and this was reported by the Israeli by the Times of Israel. Of course, officially Netanyahu's government condemned this statement from this Israeli minister on Jerusalem. Let me translate exact position of this minister. There are some reports that according to which this individual resigned after these statements, although I did not see any reports about it on Russian media. So this is Israeli Minister of Jerusalem Affairs and Heritage, Amishai Eliyahu. That's Amichai Eliyahu. That's name of this individual. And of course, the world is shocked, by the way, to hear this kind of statements that Israeli government is considering to use nuclear weapons. First of all, this is, I believe, first time when high-ranking official in Israel did recognize that they have nuclear weapons. Usually, Israeli government denies that they have nukes. But this individual probably did broke several Israeli laws, by the way, by openly saying that Israel is considering to use nuclear weapons, therefore confirming that Israel has such weapons. And now there are discussion on the internet, is it real? Will Israel use nukes in Israel on Gaza Strip or not? I believe Israeli government probably has some considerations, has had some talks about using underground blast, using nukes to detonate underground, so that these underground facilities of Palestinian groups will be destroyed, because bunker buster bombs are probably not really capable to reach deep enough to strike all the underground facilities that Hamas is operating from and some other groups. Theoretically, it's a possibility that Israeli side will detonate some 30 or 50 kiloton bomb underground, deep underground, like 300 to 500 meters, maybe kilometer, and of course it will move ground significantly, and everything underground will be destroyed instantly. But I don't know, man. If they will do this, world will definitely be shocked, I guess. I don't know what can be done to stop Netanyahu's government if they have such plans, but Israel will definitely find itself totally isolated in case of using a nuke. That's for sure. even Western states, by the way, will find it extremely difficult to defend Netanyahu's government after that. And by the way, of course, statements were made all around the world when this news went on air. And official representative of Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, also commented on this statement, and she said that, of course, this statement of this minister is causing too many questions. First of all, this is first time. She is also articulating that this is first time when Israel officially recognizing that it has nukes, and in that case, where is all the international organizations, IAEA and the rest of them, why they are not inspecting Israeli nuclear sites? And secondly, according to Maria Zakharova, this statement of Israeli official once again highlights why Israel was against attempts, international attempts to create in the Middle East a non-nuclear zone of non-nuclear zone, let's say this way, free of nuclear weapons. And Israel was always opposing this initiative. And by the way, I don't think anybody is surprised. As I said, this was open secret that Israel has nukes, 150 or 300 warheads, something like that, which is quite enough to destroy entire region. And that's why all the neighbors with Israel are not really in interest to get involved in this confrontation, because they know if Israel is forced into corner, they will use nukes. They will decimate, they will destroy all the regional countries. Absolutely. They will definitely use nukes in that case. But anyway, United Arab Emirates also reacted on this information, and the statement from Foreign Ministry of UAE says that this is totally unacceptable. Not just a statement itself, but also topic to be aired, and these threats of use of nuclear weapons. But yet again, at this point, I don't think Israeli government cares about anybody's opinion, maybe with the exception of Washington and London. And that's it. And dear friends, very interesting statement. Also, TASS news agency is reporting that any attempts of Israeli government to force Palestinian residents out of Gaza will be received by Jordan as an act of war, as a declaration of war, by the way. This is the strongest statements that we see yet from Jordan, from this kingdom. I'm not sure that King Abdullah, King of Jordan, will declare war on Israel if Netanyahu's government will force Palestinians out of Gaza Strip, but at least for domestic reasons, I guess government of Jordan was forced to come out with this strong statement, and this was said by Prime Minister, by the way, of Jordan, Bisher al-Hassan, that kingdom will take as a declaration of war if Tel Aviv will force civilians out of Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, I'm afraid nothing can stop Netanyahu's government from their plans to force civilians out of Gaza. And I'm afraid if this conflict will escalate further and third parties will get involved, Israeli side probably will try to push out of West Bank Palestinians also. Let's continue. RIA Novosti is reporting that Borrell, by the way, Borrell is in Russian media again. This head of EU diplomacy, Joseph Borrell, and well, he was seems like he was forced to acknowledge that EU failed to deal with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And he said that this is a collective failure on part of EU, that they were unable to initiate some peace talks, they were unable to avoid somehow this escalation. Yet again, Borrell indirectly is admitting that EU, by the way, as an institution or quasi-state, is a total failure, really, and total mess. And more citizens of EU member states are beginning to realize this. As no one needs really this admission from Borrell that EU is a failure. Everyone knows this. RT's reporting point is that poorer countries in EU did use this institution to receive some funds from richer countries through EU programs. And Poland, for example, Poland did become a significant economy in Europe, and this growth of Polish economy was funded basically by Germany, France, and UK, while UK was a part of EU. And now Poland, I guess, can cope without EU also. Poland is a quite strong economy, by the way, and other states also did try to repeat Polish success, but I guess because of corruption, high level of corruption or incompetence, namely in, let's say, in Bulgaria, for example, or in Romania, those countries were unable to repeat Polish success. But Poland definitely is a success story, and they use the EU every way possible, by the way. And congrats to them. They play smart and they win. And other smaller countries, of course, also use this EU. But what is in it for Germany, France, and some other big economies? I don't really know, man. They are just losing by financing, constantly financing with dozens and dozens of billions of euro, this quasi-state on a year-by-year level. But anyway, let's continue. RT is reporting that well, some strong statements are coming from Iran, by the way, and the US, according to this report, Iran's defense chief did said that US will be hit hard if no ceasefire in Gaza. So yet again, strong words. The US will face grave consequences if the hostilities in Gaza are not brought to an end, Iran's defense minister warned on Sunday. Our advice to Americans is to immediately stop the war in Gaza and implement ceasefire. Otherwise, they will be hit hard. Muhammad Raza Ashitani said, as cited by IRNA media outlet, Iran has been calling for an end of the bloodshed in the Palestine enclave and has repeatedly accused Washington of fueling tensions in the Middle East since Israel began its military operation in Gaza following an unprecedented attack by Hamas that left around 1,400 Israelis, mostly civilians, dead. Early on Sunday, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nassar Kanani said Israel was committing war crimes and genocide with the full support of the US government. Well, yet again, very strong words from Tehran, but yet again, I did not see, by the way, any indicator at this point that any country in the Middle East is planning to get involved in this confrontation to further escalate. All the countries in the region are calling for ceasefire. And I believe if Hezbollah in Lebanon and if Iran are not provoked and are not attacked, I don't see any indicators that these parties will get involved. Because in that case, of course, this conflict will become regional immediately straight away and will devastate not just the region itself, but also entire world with its consequences. Let's continue. TASS news agency is reporting that head of U.S. State Department Antony Blinken was received in Turkey, by the way, with a quite cold attitude, or he was received quite cold. He did not experience this many times when he is not greeted as some kind of, I don't know, representative of empire, high-ranking representative of emperor or big boss. Turkey's current leadership definitely do not hesitate to demonstrate when it's not happy, when Ankara is not happy with whomever, in this particular case with policies of US, and not just because of this escalation in Middle East. Ankara and Washington do have very many difficulties in the relationships, and Turkish government had the opportunity to show Antony Blinken that he is not really welcomed because of the policies of current leadership of US, and I don't think this will in any ways influence improve or Western relationships between US and Turkey. But it's interesting to see when that there are some countries that are not afraid to demonstrate its negative attitude towards US representatives. TASS news agency is also reporting, by the way, that Lavrov, head of Russian Foreign Ministry, said that at this point, there can be no negotiations between Russia and US about this treaty of, let me translate, treaty of some strategic weapon systems. So Russia will not discuss with the United States the resumption of the procedures provided for the strategic arms reduction treaty, as long as Washington supplies Kyiv with long-range weapons. It has ever been used against strategic Russian base, recalled Russian foreign. It has even been used against strategic Russian bases, recalled Russian Foreign Ministry Sergei Lavrov, speaking via video link at the Knowledge Society Marathon as a part of Russian International Exhibition and the forum. So there will be no negotiations between Moscow and Washington anytime soon about anything really, including this treaty of reduction of strategic offensive weapons. In the contrary, sides are entering arms race, by the way, including nuclear race. And RT is reporting that Russia also rules out new arms control deal with NATO. The Kremlin has formally withdrawn from a major Cold War era arms control pact with the NATO military bloc. Excuse me, saying the outdated treaty was already dead for years and had completely lost touch with reality in the modern world. The Russian Foreign Ministry announced the move on Tuesday, saying the Treaty on Conventional Arms Forces in Europe had finally become history after prior steps to withdraw, the first of which dates back to 2007. While it originally played a certain stabilizing role, the deal was largely ignored by NATO members and thus has cost to meet the interests of Russia and cease to meet interests of Russia, the ministry said. So yet again another deal about this time with NATO about conventional arms forces in Europe that will no longer exist. As I said, man, this down spiral seems unstoppable at this point when it comes to escalation between Western ruling class and Russia. RT is also reporting that Trump is beating Biden in swing states. This was reported based on New York Times poll. No surprises, really, no surprises. At this point, anybody probably can beat Biden, and Trump definitely is the most popular politician in US now and for decades, I believe. He's some kind of phenomenon that I did not see in US. He's like a rock star of politics, and I did not see this type of stuff in US for quite a while. Obama was a kind of a rock star also, kind of phenomenon. You cannot take it from him, and Trump is also the same. And before that, if you remember, maybe Clinton was also that popular, maybe, and Reagan, of course, if you go little too far in the history. But Trump is definitely some kind of phenomenon, by the way, and he seems unstoppable at this point. Anyway, let's continue. TASS news agency is reporting that, according to Peskov, Putin not yet made a decision to participate in presidential elections in 2024, and he commented this. He shared this opinion while asked about information that was published in Reuters news agency that Putin did make decision to participate in presidential election. Well, even though Peskov, official representative of president, he's a press spokesman of Putin, even though he's denying that Putin made up his mind already, and he has to say this because there are some time frame, I believe, when Putin will officially declare that he made decision to run for presidential office once again. And according to Russian constitution, by the way, he has such a right. Well, even though Peskov is denying that decision has already been made, I believe Putin has no other options at this point other than run for president, because how he can step away from this current escalation that began on his watch with the Western so-called elites and in Ukraine, by the way. So I truly don't see any ways that Putin will refuse to participate in elections. This is his responsibility. All this stuff happened on his watch, and probably he will finish what he has started. And after that, he may, I don't know, step down and leave the way to new leaders, maybe. But in 2024, Putin will definitely, participate in the elections. I'm quite sure about it. I don't think he will. He's not a person who runs from responsibility. So he cannot step away now at this point. But as I said, after this conflict in Ukraine will end in 2024 or maximum 2025, after Russia will finally defeat Western ruling class, then Putin can, which will become obvious for everybody in 2024-5, although it's already obvious. Then Putin can, I don't know, man, step down and then lead the way or give the way to some new faces, new leaders. But not now, man. It's impossible. Anyway, let's continue. TASS news agencies reporting. Although I'm not gonna vote for Putin, by the way. I have my reasons. I'm not gonna vote for anybody in presidential elections. Because I want to see strong fight against corruption. That's my main issue with the current government. I want to see stronger fight against corrupt officials and corruption as a whole, and I want to see that corruption have been leveled to a treason, and I want corrupt officials to be treated as a treason, as a people who committed treason, because that's how devastating corruption is for Russia. And until any politician will does this, I'm not gonna vote for them and I'm not gonna support them. That's it. Let's continue. TASS news agency is reporting that Australia, by the way, is imposing some sanctions on Russia. And by the way, I'm not saying that currently there is no fight on corruption. There is, of course, in Russia, and then this law enforcement agencies are trying what they can, I guess, but I believe this fight against corruption have to be 10 times more effective, 100 times more effective. And I believe corrupt officials should be treated and should go on the court as individuals that are charged in a treason, not just in corruption itself, but in a treason, because corruption is definitely treason. It's a treason of society, and those corrupt officials should be treated as such, as a treasoners of society. And jail sentences have to be the same. Put them in jail forever, for life. That's it. Anyway, let's continue. Australia is imposing some sanctions on Russia. Why? Why Australia? I mean, just why, you know? But probably Canberra has to, act according to this narrative of that has been pushed by Washington and London, and that's why Canberra is acting this way. And some goods will be banned to export in Russia as a result of these sanctions. Nothing serious, really. Nothing serious. It's just, I mean, why? Why you need to get involved in this mess, Canberra? You don't have to, But anyway, let's continue. RT is reporting that Canada heading towards recession. This is official data, by the way. Canadian economic performance remained flat in August and likely slipped into shallow contraction in the third quarter, according to the country's statistics office. The slowdown has been attributed to higher interest rates, inflation, forest fires, and drought conditions across the country. Preliminary data indicates that real GDP was unchanged in September, as well as for the third month in the row. According to the reports, services producing industries increased 0.1% month on month, while goods producing industries contracted 0.2. Overall, only 8 of 20 industrial sectors expanded, according to the figures. Well, this is not devastating numbers, of course. Canada is not in a recession in the big way. Economy is just not performing well, which is possibly quite understandable if we take in account all these sanction wars that are going on in this world. If you take in account what is happening and what may happen in the Middle East, if you take in account not the best terms or when it comes to relationships between Canada and China, by the way, one of the major driving force in world economy. And after all, policies of Canadian governments, man. I mean, Trudeau, when you have a prime minister, Trudeau, what you expect? I mean, I guess his government is similar people as Trudeau is. And I mean, I wouldn't trust Trudeau to I don't know, man, wash the car. And how you Canadians trust him to run government, by the way? I don't know. Anyway, let's continue. Let's hope economy will recover, because we should always keep in mind that whenever any troubles in economies, it's ordinary people like us, by the way, that are engaged in these difficulties, not the so-called elites in those countries, isn't it? Anyway, let's continue. RT is reporting that West's Russian oil price cap not working, according to Wall Street journals. Wow, what a revelation. We did not know it, and the Wall Street Journal told us. Funny people, man. And but it is interesting that Western media outlets are kind of forced to acknowledge some basic truth that everybody knows in this world. Especially outside of Western world, because in the West itself, because of this heavy propaganda, maybe a significant part of societies are truly not informed that well, and maybe they're thinking that all these sanctions are decimating Russian economy or something like that. We all knew that these price caps did not work. This price cap on Russian oil did not work even single day. But let's read the news. So the price cap on Russian oil introduced by the G7 and EU late last year in effort to curtail Moscow's energy revenues has been proving increasingly ineffective. The Wall Street Journal reports on Sunday the EU and the G7 countries agreed on a $60 per barrel price ceiling on Russian seaborne oil exports in December 2022, and this past February placed similar restrictions on exports of Russian petroleum products. The mechanism works by allowing Western companies to transport, trade, or insure Russian oil only if it's sold at or below $60 per barrel. While Moscow's revenues from oil and gas sales dropped by 46% year-on-year in January to 426 billion rubles, $4.6 billion, after the price cap was first enforced, they have since risen dramatically. According to the latest data from the Russian Finance Ministry, the country's oil and gas revenues stood at 1.635 trillion rubles, which is 17.6 billion US dollars in October alone, more than doubling month on month and up by more than a quarter from October 2022. And by the way, I remind you that Ursula Bursula a few days ago did, while she was visiting Zelensky, and discussing fates of washing machines and chips from washing machines. She also said at that moment that EU is considering to put new price cap on Russian oil lower than current one. So EU is planning to, even though entire world understands that this price ceiling is not working, EU is planning to put on Russian oil even lower price cap. She did not set numbers, but I mean, it's 60 now, so at least it's gonna be 55, 50, or maybe no less than that. And why? Question is why these European bureaucrats are acting this crazy and are making fool of themselves openly in public. I don't know. But probably they are so much out of touch with reality that they did not recognize how they've been seen by world. And dear friends, I remind you that Western ruling elites were planning or hoping that this price ceiling will work, because they were forcing insurance companies, in Western insurance companies, not to give insurance to ships that were transporting Russian fuel if it was sold over the $60 price cap. And what happened is, by the way, that companies that are buying Russian oil find new insurance in China, mainly in India, by the way, in Global East. And by this move, by the way, Brussels did hit not Russian energy sector, but insurance sector of EU. So, I mean, you tell me how adequate these Brussels bureaucrats are, man. But anyway, let's continue. RIA Novosti is reporting that trade between Russia and China since the beginning of this year rose 27.7% and did reach 196.48 billion US dollars. I remind you, dear friends, that the target was 200 billion in the beginning of this year, and this target will definitely be achieved for before end of December. Trade between two countries will probably reach 250 billion. That's 230, 250 billion. That's quite a possibility. And in current terms, from this 196 billion, 90 billion was goods that was imported by Russia, and same time Russia did also export into China goods for 106.405 billion. So Russia is one of the rarest countries in this world who has no deficit in trade with China. It's exactly the opposite. Russia has a deficit in trade with China, which is quite unusual stuff to see, isn't it? Even US, by the way, has a huge deficit in trade with China, hundreds of billions of dollars, which means that US is importing much more from China than China imports from US. But anyway, let's continue. RT is reporting also that China and Russia are stepping up works on the new gas route, CNPC. So Russian energy company Gazprom is cooperating with China to accelerate the launch of gas supplies via the Far Eastern route. China National Petroleum Corporation Vice President Xi Jun has revealed the Far East route envisages supplies of Russian natural gas to China from the shelf of Sakhalin Island. While addressing the plenary session at St. Petersburg's International Gas Forum, Xi Jun reportedly said, "Our company and Gazprom are striving to build a closer energy partnership and are systematically accelerating their implementation of the gas supply projects along the Far Eastern routes." Well, it's just obvious and expectable that as time goes by, more and more combined energy projects will be developed by Russian and Chinese companies. Very same will happen in many other industries also, not just energy. And China will definitely become, I guess, one of the major investors in Russia. Let's continue. RT is also reporting, by the way, that Russia's retail gets a 44 billion September boost. That's quite interesting number. Consumer demand in Russia has been growing steadily on the back of higher real wages and record low unemployment, according to data from Russia's tax service and statistics agency Rosstat. Statistics show that in the third quarter of this year, households spend 81.9% of their income on goods and services, compared to 79% a year ago. Retail trade turnover in September was 12.2% annually, surprising market expectations and amounting to over 1 trillion rubles, which is over $44 billion. Data shows that retail sales, key gauge of consumer demand, this summer surprised levels last seen before the West major expansion of Ukraine-related sanctions early last year. Economists forecast that retail turnover in Russia will grow by 5.2% in 2023, after failing by 6% in 2022. However, by the end of the year, consumer activity may start to fade amid rising deposit and lending rates. Experts have warned. Well, one way or another, Russian economy is alive well and well, which may be a surprise for Western ruling elites and the societies in the Western countries that are under heavy influence of the propaganda, anti-Russian propaganda. But that's numbers, by the way. And numbers don't care about anybody's feelings, isn't it? Or expectations, especially expectations of Western ruling elites. But anyway, this is it for now. Yet again, by the way, quite a long update, and I don't know what to do with this, man. Updates are becoming longer and longer. It's already hour and 12 minutes. But hopefully you will find this update interesting. Plenty of news from all around the world about many different topics. And well, if you did find this update interesting, please, dear friends, click that like button and leave some commentary about any topic you like. More likes and comments are only way we have to fight back this YouTube's immensely aggressive algorithm. And for very same reason, if you can, please share links to my videos or my channel with your friends on any of the platforms that you are active on. I don't know, Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, any. And finally, dear friends, if you think this project with these several channels on YouTube, Rumble and Telegram are interesting, informative, useful, and deserves to exist in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support my work with small donations through PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You can see links under this video in the description box or in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.